everybody. Welcome to our fantasy panel. Today, I think, what did I call it? Fantasy adventure. What did I call it? What did I call it, Jackie?
Fantasy horror adventure. That's all I can see.
Yes. Okay, that panel. I'm so excited to have all of my wonderful friends here and to see your faces. I haven't seen your guys' faces in a while. So we're going to start real quickly and go on with we're going to introduce everybody. So please introduce yourself and tell us where you're tuning in from and a little bit about your books. We'll start with Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I am tuning in from Wichita, Kansas. I'm in a hotel room. My sister was in an opera, and so we've spent the last week and a half here. It's very cold and very windy. And what was the other question? Tell us about books. I have several books. The three I have here are The Cemetery Tours. It's about a young man he can see and talk to the dead, try to select to keep it a secret, a little bit of romance, a little bit of suspense, lots of ghost hunting. I have Boy Band, which is about a young lady in love with her best friend who just happens to be a member of the world's hottest boy band. And by the way, right now I am obsessed with BTS. So if anyone wants to talk about them with me, yeah, let's talk BTS. And then I have Once Upon a Midnight Clear, which is a Christmas novella about a princess who was supposed to marry a handsome prince, but he fell in love with an American girl. So,
She really is in love with BTS. Like, I'll get tagged.
I really am.
And I'm looking at it.
You're
I love
watching
him. This is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. I'm like, yes, Jackie. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. So, Hobie, if you ever see this, call me, text me.
Go Army. Is he a guy from BTS?
Yeah. No, it's the fan base. Army is the fan base.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. See, I
even have my little BTS necklace on. Just
Okay,
this is my whole personality now, guys.
I'm going to show y'all. Y'all are going to laugh. This I've had. I shouldn't even be doing this because it's not part of the thing. I've had this New Kids on the Block thing since like 8th grade. I'm like forever a blockhead. So I understand.
I love it so much.
You BTS kids. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So next, Miracle.
I love it, Jackie. I'm so happy to be here. Margie, thank you so much for putting this on. Incredible work that you're doing, and so happy to be with all my wonderful friends here. I'm Miracle Austin. I'm tuning in from Waco, Texas. It's about in the 50s, and it's supposed to get down in the 30s later on this evening. So just gotta wait and see that. And I have a doll. Well, I'll just show you. I have a doll trilogy. It's a supernatural love story. And it deals with a lot of different teen issues. And Boundless is basically an eclectic collection of short stories and free verse poems. And I give you a little bit of everything in that collection. And like I said, I'm excited to be here today and listen to all of y'all and whatever questions Margie's going to throw our way. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to see your guys' faces. You don't understand how happy I am to see your faces. Okay, so Katelynn, we'll have Katelynn next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katelynn Renteria, and I am tuning in from Harlingen, Texas. So I am on just a little bit away from Margie. I'm so sorry, Miracle. It's like 78 right now, and we're supposed to get a cold front, but I'm very much hanging on to that 78 degrees. But I do have a young adult fiction novel called The Other Side of the Law. It's about a Texas girl. You see her on the street. She's just your average teenager, but in secret, she's a spy. So missions, adventures, action, suspense, and all that fun stuff. And I am so very excited to once again not only be on Border Book Bash. Thank you so much, Margie, but also you guys are my friends, to see you and say hi, and the sparks. I'm very excited to see what this panel is going to bring.
Yes, thank you for being here and for being like my everything. I can text Katelynn anytime because I don't know anything about streaming. It might look like everything is going smoothly, but I'm really over here like, Katelynn, what's going on? But great, thank you, Katelynn. I love you. And we're gonna have DC Gomez next.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I haven't seen you guys in forever. Miss Katelynn, I actually saw you last month, but feels like forever. Margie, thank you for having me. I'm in East Texas. I'm in Texarkana, and we're in the middle of a thunderstorm. So I keep praying my power doesn't go out. I was like, please don't do that now. So other than that, that's kind of where we're at. So we're watching thunder coming down like crazy. So books, I don't think I'm prepared. So let's see what I have here. So I do a little bit of everything. I do art and fantasy. I do humorous fiction, children's books. I think if anything about me is I do lots of quirky, lots of fun. So last book out in my urban fantasy was Judgment Day, which is really hard to promote if you're in the middle of pandemic. So try to sell a book called Judgment Day at the end of it. It's kind of hard. And then I have the Cat Lady special, which is completely in the opposite spectrum. So I do a little bit of all.
We're happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. Let's say Cody next.
Hi.
Where are you? Oh, bundled up.
I know, right? I'm Cody Wagner, and I'm actually I took a trip with some friends to a cabin in Prescott, Arizona. And just so you get an idea, like this is where we are at right now. And it's so beautiful, but it's like 25 degrees outside and like 50 degrees in here. And so even though you think I'm just being festive, I'm just trying to stay alive. It's so cold. It's so miserable. It was so bad that you had to take a dirt road up here, and it was so icy. My car slid back into oncoming traffic. I couldn't make it here, and we had to turn around and go rent a 4x4 to actually just make it to the cabin. It was insanity yesterday getting here. But anyway,
I'm glad you're alive.
You know what? Me too. And about books, I am the author of LGBTQ series, The Gay Teen's Guide to Defeating a Siren. It's an urban fantasy trilogy about a teenager who comes out. His parents drag him off to this horrible prey-away the gay boarding school. But when the parents leave, the school reveals it's actually a secret refuge for gay teens. And he gets to go to a secret gay high school. And there's also a fantasy element involved, which is why I am here. And the third book was just released this year.
And they're fabulous. It's been like I tell him that his book covers, I love his book covers. They're the best book covers. Okay, so I'm so excited to have you guys here. You don't understand. Like I wish I could. I'm gonna try to behave because y'all are like my friends, and I get crazy. I'm gonna try to keep it professional because we're live for everyone. So I'm going to start with this question. This panel is our fantastical, magical group. And everything you guys do is amazing. I love everything you all do. So please tell me, why did you choose this genre to write for young people? We'll start with Jackie.
Well, I always say that my mom kind of raised my sister and me on the paranormal. Halloween was a very big deal growing up. Even when we were kids, she had us in front of the TV watching like America's Most Haunted and the most haunted places in the world. So I've always had kind of a fascination. But honestly, the reason I wrote Cemetery Tours is because I honestly wrote it to make myself feel better after my cat died. And I really never intended, I'm not sure if I ever really intended to publish it. It's just kind of something that I was writing it and I thought, oh, I really like this. I think I could put this out there. And yeah, that's how that kind of happened. And I guess what I love about it is it's my way of assuring people, death is not the end. There is more after this life. At least that's what I believe. I 110% believe that, life goes on.
I'm trying to do 10 things at once, but yes. Okay.
Oh, you're good. I'm
just going, and I believe that too. I believe, and people are gonna think I'm weird because I don't care. I believe that like we're not. Sometimes like I'll say like, you know what? In my next life, I'm gonna marry Henry Cavill. Like that's what's gonna happen because I truly believe because it's not gonna be in this life. Obviously, he hasn't found me yet, but I think in my next life he will find me. So I believe that too, Jackie. Thank you. Okay, so Miracle.
Margie, just leading into that, are you watching the second season of The Witcher?
I am going to start tonight.
Okay.
And I can't wait. I cannot wait. And I was even talking about this with somebody the other day at school. Like The Witcher, it's totally out of my. I like fantasy, but that's real high fantasy. And I remember trying to read the first book, and it was like it went beyond my little pea brain of fantasy. Like I was like, oh my god, because it was so fantastical that it's amazing. The writing's amazing, but I was just like, wow. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch him on the screen instead. It's just so much better that way. Yeah. I love it. I love The Witcher.
Yeah.
Is it started? I think it started already, right?
It started. If I'm not mistaken, isn't it based on a game? Or am I mistaken on that?
It's on a game, but then there's books also. Yeah. So I remember trying to read them all, but they were just too crazy. I'm not as smart as these gamers with these books and this life. But oh my god! But I can watch it all day.
I understand. As far as my love for horror, my mom introduced me into horror, even though it's so funny now. What's so ironic about that? She dislikes horror now. But when I was growing up, that's all that we watched. Mostly listened to AM. Well, now it'd be a podcast, but back then it was AM station that aired spooky stories on Friday night. So I fell in love with that, and it just took me, and then started reading different horror books and things of that nature. And I just love it. I love horror, supernatural, suspense. There's a few things that I won't write about, but other than that, I'm pretty game for anything. So I just love it. And as far as the doll series, my mom, she shared a story when she was younger, and that kind of grew from that. And it was never supposed to be a series, which is supposed to be a little short story, but it kept growing into one book and then 2 and 3. So that's how that happened. But yes, I've been on the dance floor with horror since I was probably before junior high and remain on the floor. So that's my little tale.
Horror to me, I'm scared. Like whenever I was little, I remember watching like Nightmare on Elm Street, never been able to sleep again. Watching Children of the Corn, like that was the scariest movie. Now I watch it and I'm like, oh my god, why was I so scared? It was like so cheesy. But when we were little, the name Malachi still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like that horror scares me. I guess because it's so, I don't even know if it can be real. People are crazy like that sometimes. I don't know. So you are like, to me, like a hero, because I can't deal with, I'm scared of horror. But okay, so next, Katelynn.
Yes. So the thing about young adult fiction, and I think also just like books geared towards like elementary schoolers, middle schoolers, is that, you know, they're about middle school characters, they're about, you know, young adult characters. And I think growing up, I always loved reading the stories that, like, I know Carl Hiaasen, I never want to botch his last name. He's one of my absolute favorites just because he always wrote for like the middle school genre, but his books, I know Hoot won like an award and it has a movie, and it's about a boy who ran away from military school, endangered owls, and a pancake house. And they're weird and you don't know how they fit together, but he would always write these stories and make them exciting, and it was about kids for kids. So when I began writing, I kind of mirrored that, where I was writing a character who was my age, 14 at the time, and like wanting to see, I can't, you know, go around the world and fight crime and do all this cool stuff, but you can in a book. And when you would read, you know, it's that escapism of, I can do all these amazing things through the eyes of these characters. And so I continue to write, and I wrote and will continue on to write in the young adult genre, just because it's that escapism, and, you know, you can't do it here, but you can in a book. And that's the goal. And that's why I write in the genre that I do.
I love young adult. It's my favorite too, but I want to show this quote from my movie. Horror loves to dance. It just dips you in blood.
That's really good.
I'm sorry, go.
Oh, no, that's really good. That's a good quote.
Okay, so next we have DC Gomez.
I think writing for me in urban fantasy became very natural, but most people don't realize I grew up in Salem, Massachusetts. So the world of, yes, I grew up in Salem. I know Jackie was there recently, so yes, that's my hometown, and I come from Dominican Republic. I know. So the idea, I had a conversation with my cousin today, because, you know, we have friends who say I'm a witch, and I was like, so is half of my town. Like, this is not anything new. So the idea of magic and the supernatural and being involved in the whole urban culture and underground was just natural. That's just kind of where I became. And I don't think I realized how comfortable I felt until I moved to East Texas and I'm in the Bible Belt. And I realized the rest of the people around me don't think the same way. So it's like, this is a little different. This is now, we're not home anymore. So writing urban fantasy, not only do I love to read it, but this is just my bubble. It just seems to be a little part of my life. So it's just kind of, sometimes we write what we know and sometimes you write the things that just inspire you. So that concept of having the magic within your own city and the things that happen behind closed doors just became very simple to me.
That's awesome. I did not know you were from Salem. Like that's
I realized
never
I
heard.
realize most people really know. It's one of those like I grew up in Salem, so I am officially from the word city.
Wow. That's cool. Wow. Okay, so we have Cody.
Hi, yeah. So I actually have my more serious half of the answer for that would be I grew up a gay kid in a little town by Amarillo called Pampa in Texas. And you could imagine it was not the most gay-friendly place in the universe. And so I think all I really wanted to do was just get away. And so for me, I was trying to escape as far away as I possibly could in my mind. And that took me to fantasy, because where else can you escape that's further than another world? And so that's where I fell in love with fantasy. But then on the less serious side, I've always been obsessed with like magic and powers. And so I was the kid who would lie in bed at night, every night, and just stare at my ceiling fan and just be like, turn it off. And I would try to turn it off with magic. And you would think you would outgrow that. But last night I was so cold, I was staring at the thermostat and I didn't want to get out of bed. And so I'm like, turn off, like turn up the heat. And I was trying to use magic to turn up the heat, but it never worked. So, but those are the reasons I got into fantasy.
And the only reason I laugh at you, Cody, is because I do the same thing. I'm like, I know I'm a Jedi. I can do this with my mind. I know it. So I don't even want
that makes me feel so much better.
It's so I understand. That's so
I love that.
I think that we like people like us who believe in magic and who love this genre of fantasy, and I just think we're like beautiful people. Like we're just like the best people in the world. That's what I think. Okay, so next, I want to know why you guys chose to write for young people. Like, what was your? Because we can write. Writers can write anywhere, and there's money more. Sometimes it's better in the adult genre. But so, why do you guys choose to write for young people? We'll start with Jackie.
Well, like you, Margie, I love young adult. I grew up with Meg Cabot, who to this day remains my writing idol. I want her to be my cat's godmother. I love her so much. And those books really just had a huge impact on me. And that's the audience I wanted to write for. And I feel like that's the audience I connect with the most. And it's also kind of one of the things where I think something we all share is that we all love to encourage young people not only to read, but also to explore their own stories. And so that's why I really love writing books for the young adult audience.
I think the young adult audience is a very special audience. Like I remember just being a young adult, and I don't think I ever left being a young adult. Like I know I'm like old now, but it's like I still like live. I read young adult. I live young adult. Like it's like you don't ever want to get past that beautiful time of adolescence where everything was just so innocent and new and perfect. You know what I mean? Or I shouldn't say perfect because it wasn't perfect. Adolescence isn't perfect, but it was fun. At least mine was. I had a very fun childhood, and not that I don't have a fun adult life. I do, but I just loved that time, and I just love. That's why I'm a high school librarian, because I love that time. Like I loved everything those kids are going through and everything that they get to do and how they have their whole lives ahead of them. And I wish they knew. I wish they could understand but they don't, because they're too little to understand where we're coming from when we tell them like, guys, you only have one chance. Like you need to do good in school now because, this all affects your future, but they're too busy having fun. And I understand that because I was there one time. But okay. So Miracle, why did you choose to write for young adults?
Well, believe it or not, Margie, I fell into it accidentally. I never thought I was going to write, number one. It just happened, several years back. And I never targeted the young adult population to write for. And I never knew I was really writing stories for young adult until a potential publisher said, your audience is more young adults. And it just kind of a bell went off. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. And I really shouldn't be surprised because, being a social worker for many years, I worked in foster care. I've worked in residential facilities and psych hospitals with teens. So it really was a good fit for me to just, embrace it. And that's what I did. And I just love it. And my junior high school years weren't the best. And so I wanted to make sure that I use those different elements whenever I do write stories. Because I know other kids, even though it's 2021, issues are always going to be the same. It's just a different time. So that's kind of was my reasons for doing it.
Katelynn, you are still a young adult, but it's almost like she's grown up right before our eyes because we've known her since she was 16 or something, and so now she's a young adult in college. But and she's kind of like our S.E. Hinton of the little group is Katelynn, when she started to write at such a young age. So tell us, Katelynn, why?
You're gonna make me cry. Yes, I know. Echoing back to what Miracle had said, that adolescence, young adult time, there's all sorts of struggles. And I think today, not, more so than in the past, but issues evolve and struggles evolve and mental health and things like that. It's hard to grow up and it's hard to be a kid and transition to middle school, then high school, then college and life. It's difficult. And reading is that escape to be able to see a different world and see the eyes through characters that are going through their own struggles, but you connect with them. And I think what's amazing about the fantasy or the fiction genre is that, they're going up against these things that there are obstacles that you would never see in your real life, but you can connect with them and you can hurt with them. And how can I relate to this, person around the world defeating this bad guy? How can I relate to this magic teenager, but you do. And it's also very important just because you're able to educate and, reading is knowledge and literature is knowledge. And so to be able to have a young adult open a book and learn about a different culture or a different race or different types of people, different languages, different traditions, and all in the comfort of their own homes, they're escaping, but they're learning. It's so important to be able to give that diversity. And us as authors and writers, we're blessed to be able to put those stories out there. But we also have a duty to be able to educate in everything that we do. So it's definitely to provide that escapism for kids that they need it sometimes. And then to also spread the knowledge and perpetuate, learn about different people. You don't have to, go across the world or go looking for it. Just open a book and there's so much that you can learn. So that's definitely why I think it's so, so, so important. Just the escapism, giving them that open door. And just teaching. We have a very unique opportunity that through the words that we write, they reach people in a lot of different ways.
And Katelynn, we are so proud of you. Look at how beautifully, she's so articulate. We're just so proud of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
DC?
So I want to say probably in my other life, as Jackie has said, I used to be a youth minister. So when I started writing, one of the things that I was very self-conscious about is I wanted to write. And I also wanted to make sure that if my kids ever picked it up, that I wouldn't be like, ooh, did my minister just did that? I was very much aware of this concept of what they were going to say. So when I wrote the first book, that's intern, it was very conscious about the language. And I wanted them to take them on an adventure. I wanted to take you some actions. I wanted to take you some actions in Texarkana. And still keep it semi-focused on them and that age, that you were not going to sit here and have tons of pages of full sex on and every bloody detail that I wanted them to be able to comfortable and their parents not to look at me and be like, yeah, you need some Jesus right now, girl. That was the catch. I wanted them to be able to still read this book and enjoy it. And I was really happy because one of the parents came up to me. He was like, so book 2, is it going to be the same? And I had to sit there and ask, was like, okay, what do you mean? What is that supposed to mean? And I read young adult all the time. And I was hooked in a couple of series. And part of the series, book 1 was exciting. Book 2, you had more sex scenes than an adult book. And you're like, ooh, that's not what I think is young adult. And the parent confirmed it. She's like, I'm very cautious of what my kids read. I'm comfortable enough in your first book. Is it going to be the same? And she's going to be able to read it. Am I going to have to say, no, we need to stop this right now? So when I write, I wanted to be very much aware that parents and children have an expectation that you can feel comfortable that this book is not going to completely expose you to a lot more stuff that you're not ready for at that age, but that you're going to have an amazing adventure. Like Katelynn said, I want to take you on a journey that's going to blow your mind. And if you walk down the street, you know exactly what it looks like because you're going to be in town. And still be prepared for that. So it became very conscious because of what I was doing at the time, but because I also was reading a lot of young adults that I didn't think were very age appropriate, that I wouldn't feel comfortable with my 14-year-olds in my group to be like, yeah, let's have a discussion about that book. It's like, no, we're not talking about the book. Like, that's something you need to talk to your parents. Go for it.
That's, and sometimes as a young adult librarian, those are some issues that we face with books. Sometimes it's like, but yeah. But no, for the most part, young adult, I feel very happy and very comfortable with with most of the books that we share with our young people, because our young adult writers are some of them, they're very educated. Like a lot of times you think a writer's just like, these people most of them have like their MFAs or PhDs, and not that you need that to be a writer, but I think young adult literature does a very good job of like they're very careful and they know. I know in the diverse literature, they are very aware of who they're speaking to, and they want to make sure that they get it right, and they do. And I'm really grateful for that as a parent and as a librarian. Okay, so Cody.
Yeah. So going back to my childhood again. Growing up, the gay kid in Pampa, Texas, you would think that the homophobia was so overt and there were picket signs and protests, but it was pretty much the opposite, to where being gay was so taboo that it didn't exist. So my little town tried to pretend that being gay was not even a thing that existed at all, and it was just swept under the rug. And so while I wasn't bullied for being gay then, at the same time, I felt like I was on an island. Like I felt like I was the only gay person in the universe at times, and it was very lonely. And so that was where if I would have had a book that had someone that represented me that I could identify with, it would have meant the world to me, to make me feel like I wasn't alone. There was someone else like me out there. And so I knew that eventually I would write young adult LGBT books with fantasy and build a time machine with all my magic powers and go back in time and give it to young me and be like, wash your hair, but also here's this book that you could use, because I never washed my hair. I went like months without washing my hair. So I really did. I was special. But I have this quote I wanted to read real quick, because it's one that I read for young adults about having diversity in books. And it actually says, when you open a book and read of a character who thinks, feels, and loves the way that you do, you feel less alone, you feel more validated, and you feel more confident in your identity. And I think that is just, to me, such a powerful quote that I just love to share that. And then finally, I have to say, Margie, about Children of the Corn, it just sticks in my head. I never saw it as a kid, and it was my brother's scariest movie of all time as a child. And he made me watch it when I was an adult, and it was the worst movie ever. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But he was like, no, if you're a kid and you're watching this, it is the most terrifying thing you will ever see.
It was. Because I watch it now, and the cinematography maybe is just not as, the special effects aren't as, but as a kid in the 80s, that was it. And it was so real. And it was so scary. Like, it was very scary. Like, to this day, I won't go to corn mazes. They have like, oh, come to the corn maze. I'm like, no way am I going to go to that corn maze. Like, no way. Like, you're crazy telling me to go to a corn maze. Like, that movie is still like, oh my God. And Nightmare on Elm Street. Like whenever I know it's so dumb. Like now you watch it, and whenever he goes into the bed, like I remember that was the scariest thing of my life at the time. I remember going to sleep in my room thinking like, oh my god, like Freddy Krueger's coming for me because he said it was coming for me. Like why? That's why I can't do horror to this day. I live in the middle of nowhere. My back door is like this open door, like you can see outside, and it's scary. And I'm like, no. I can't do horror because I really believe in horror. So I'm like, no, I can't do it. So don't make fun of Children of the Corn, Cody. So now I'm gonna ask you guys. I'm gonna watch it again because you're right. But when we were little, did you see it when you were a little, Miracle? It was scary.
I think I saw it when I was like maybe a little older. I don't know. That one didn't freak me out that much. But I totally understand, Margie, because we have different levels. Yeah. So it's okay, but I get it. But no, that wasn't one for me. But I have others that did. So we could probably, agree and disagree with that, which is more than fine. But I tell you what, that sheet scene, that body wrapped in a sheet scene in Nightmare on Elm Street when it was carrying her, down the hallway, that's always stuck in my mind. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. The other day, one of my friends, she was wearing a sweater, and it was that green. I'm like, why are you wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater? Like, what? And she's like, it's not a Freddy Krueger. I was like, that's a Freddy Krueger sweater. Like, why are you wearing that?
Margie, I said that recently because I think Ed Sheeran has his new music video. It's like, why is he wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater? My brother's like, it's a Christmas sweater. I was like, why does Freddy wear a Christmas sweater? I'm so confused about this. So he had to give me a whole lesson. It's like, you do know he's a Christmas ghost. I was like, no, I didn't. I did not. Sorry, I missed that whole thing. I completely did not get that. Yes, he's the Christmas poltergeist. I was like, are you sure? Because I wanted some explanation. He's like, the Christmas sweater. I was like, fine. Why is he wearing a Freddy Krueger sweater? Yes, he's wearing.
So speaking of Christmas sweater, I was
old when I learned that. What does that say?
I didn't know that. I don't know if it's true, but my brother gave me a whole lecture on this. I was like, oh yeah, I love that.
Yes, that's cute. I hope you don't freeze, Cody. I'm like real worried about you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys this question. I like to ask authors to tell us who their favorite writers were when they were kids and how their love of reading began. Jackie.
I've already said my favorite author as a kid was Meg Cabot. I first read the Princess Diary series when it was first coming out, and that led me to reading every book she's ever written. And when I didn't realize I wanted to be a writer until I was in college. But when I did realize that, I just knew it's like, oh, I want to be like Meg Cabot. I want to write, because she doesn't just write the Princess Diary. She writes ghost stories. She writes adventure stories like Katelynn. She writes every genre you can imagine. And I'm like, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to do. But my love of reading, I mean, my mom was reading to both my sister and me, from the time we were infants. And I do remember the very first time a book ever really sparked my imagination. It was a book called Shortcut by Donald Cruz. My preschool teacher read it to us, and it was about a group of kids that walk home. They take the shortcut on the railway tracks, and it's the middle of the night, and they're about to get home, and you can hear, all of a sudden you hear the train whistle in the distance. And that, as a 3-year-old child, that gave me the chills. That gave me this feeling of, oh my gosh, there's something scary out there, and it's a train, and it's coming toward us. I could feel it, and that just blew my little mind. And I went home, and I actually, because I didn't remember what it was called at the time, so I rewrote the book and I stapled it together, and I still have the little book because I was trying to recapture that feeling. So, and ever since then, I just love reading. Sorry.
Miracle?
Margie, did you ask for favorite authors?
Favorite authors, why you love reading, and where your love of reading began.
Okay. Favorite author should be no surprise to anyone on the panel, of course. Stephen King, R.L. Stein, Alvin Schwartz. Those are probably my favorites. I have others, but those are my favorite horror authors. Supernatural. As far as my love for reading, probably junior high. That's probably when I was really first introduced. And one of the books that I really enjoy, I don't know if y'all remember this one, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. Y'all recall that one by Robert C. O'Brien? Okay. Well, that was one of my favorites. And also The Rescuers. I love that. And also Watership Down. So those are my favorites. So those probably are the three that really captivated me, and just, I just fell in love with reading those books when I was younger. So those are classics, classic books. And yeah, those are the main ones that did it for me. So yes.
Jason says absolutely, Nim. I love those books too. They are, and the little movies that they made of the little cartoons are cute too. Whenever Michael was little, Michael loved Goosebumps, Carl Stein. And I remember one year I was pregnant with Mateo. It was a while back, and I was working at Texas Book Fest for I was volunteering with TLA, and R.L. Stein was going to be there. And I was like, okay, how do I get my kid to meet R.L. Stein? Like that, I had to do that. And I was never a big Goosebumps fan, but he loved Goosebumps. So I was like, okay. So you had to like buy a ticket to get like to the head of the line. I don't even remember. It was a ridiculous amount of money to pay for this ticket to be like in the front of the line. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it for my kid. And I remember we bought the ticket. We were there at the Capitol in Austin. And I saw him standing up there. And I said, you know what? I was pregnant, right? And nobody tells pregnant women anything. They kind of just, So I got Michael, and I said, and I pulled him, and I took him to the front, not caring. And I said, hello, Mr. Stein. And I put my kid in front of him, and I was like, click, like I just wanted, and the man was kind of like, oh. And then the lady next to him was kind of like, oh, you can't be taking pictures. And I was like, oh, okay. But like, I had already gotten my picture with Michael and R.L. Stein. I didn't care. Like, so Michael has a picture of him and R.L. Stein. They didn't kick me out because I think they were like, oh, she's pregnant. Like, that's just, she's pregnant, people are crazy. So just move her out of the way. And so I went back, and Michael was sitting in the very front, so he got to get his book signed. And that was probably one of the most amazing. I wasn't even like I said, a Goosebumps reader, but just to be around that man, just to have a picture with Michael and him, and just to like have a book signed by R.L. Stein probably is one of the most amazing things that I ever used my pregnancy for. It was cool. But okay, so Katelynn.
Oh, I know for me, I mentioned one of them already. Carl Hiaasen, when the way that he just wrote, especially for like the middle school area, it was just always amazing to see how he got such different topics and brought it together, and it was beautiful. But I know the love of reading definitely started. It's always been present. I can't remember a time in my life when reading wasn't one of my main hobbies or things that we did, just because my parents were always reading bedtime stories or in the car and things like that. And I know Dr. Seuss is still one of my favorites, just because it's amazing when you look at it. Like as a kid, you love it, right? Because the pictures are cute, the words rhyme, and it helps with like diction and articulation and knowing consonants and assonants and things like that. But when you grow up and you look, you see like he made up like tweedle, deedle, buddle, fuddle, waddle, and we loved it and we thrived off of it. And he's got a whole week for his birthday. And so I think that's amazing that he just had fun with it. He completely made up new words and new characters, and he's created this brand and this whole like, not genre in and of itself, but you hear Dr. Seuss and it's a whole separate world and realm. And I loved that. And even now at my time in my life and moving forward, I'm like, that'd be so cool, like to have a whole Katelynn Renteria genre like that. It's so cool how he like made it the way that he did. And so reading definitely started at I'm blanking on, was it Emily Buchwald who said that children become readers on the laps of their parents? That's 100% true. And that's definitely where it started for me, just that my parents took the time to sit down and read, and they would ask, what did I want to read? They had the selection, and then, what do you want to read tonight? Is there a different one that you want? That they let me have a voice in the matter and let me choose, oh, I want to hear the princess book today. I want to hear the dog book today. So they made it a positive thing, and they made it me have an active role in it. So it started with my parents, and it continued on through authors that I definitely wanted to mimic. And I know a big one was, we talked about, Margie mentioned her earlier, S.E. Hinton with The Outsiders. Reading that book in the 8th grade was kind of like, wow. Because up until then, I had read books that were about, the fantasy and the magic and all. It was amazing. But then to read something that had like real world problems in a way that was raw, and oh my gosh, and these kids in this book were only a little bit older than me, that like blew my mind, of just seeing how well written it was. And this is something that, wow, it had that sense of reality and authenticity. So moving forward, trying to write in a way that was also raw and real and gripping with kids that were just like me, or just like other people who would read. There's definitely been multiple authors that sparked that influence, but it all started with little Katelynn being read to in the crib, and then continuing on to now taking my own brother to the library, or we'll trade web comics and things. And so it's always been present for as long as I can remember.
That's amazing. DC?
I think I'm like Caitlin. I can't think of a time in my life that I wasn't reading, and I'm trying to think back. Probably my parents had that huge influence. One of the most influential writers for me was probably my dad's favorite writer, which is One Bush, who happened to be a Dominican president. He was a politician, but above all, he's known as the professor. Like, he has been involved. He was more involved in more constitution making Latin America than anybody else. So he is one of those revolutionaries that you can possibly imagine, but he financed everything he did through his writing. Like, that's how he made his money. He was a writer at the core. And one of his biggest principles is, like, as a writer, you should write for everybody so that people can understand. Even if you have $50 word, then you shouldn't. You should write for the level of the people that people can read. So I remember growing up listening to his stories, listening to his books, listening to his parables. And as an adult, I look back and I realized my dad teaches in parables. I was like, oh my God, I'm 42 and now I realize this. So all of his lessons comes with a story, and they come with this amazing message. So it's always been part of who I am. So one of my biggest, probably favorite books and influence is The Alchemist. So I have read that book over and over. And I remember growing up, I wanted to go to Spain and go find this treasure. And I wanted to do all these things because of this child had this dream. And that's how I was going to change the world. I was going to have this dream, and I was going to go find the treasure and be able to be the alchemist myself. So.
And I think that's why books are so important. Like, books are magic. Sometimes I get so sad whenever some of the kids at school are like, well, I don't like to read. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I just wish, like, I'm like, why don't you like to read? And I feel so like helpless sometimes, because books are magic, and you just give the right book to the right child. I think Judy Blume said that, you give the book to the right book to the right child, you can change someone's life. And I totally believe that, because I've made, as a teacher and as a librarian, I know giving the right book to the right child can change their life, can fix something that they're looking for. Like, I've had, like, kids like Cody who come and say, like, well, my mom doesn't like that I'm gay, and my mom, and it's hard whenever they come and tell you stuff like that, because you're just like, it's not that your mom doesn't like you, your mom loves you, it's just right now. And they don't sometimes parents don't understand, and parents aren't always the smartest people. And, we have different expectations for our kids. And when something happens that we don't expect, it's just give her some time and just, try, but don't ever think your parents don't love you. Like, I get so sad when they come and tell me stuff like that. So what do I do? Like, I get a book, like, here, read this book. And a lot of times they come back, with, oh, I loved it. And then, and you give them more and more and more. And I just feel books are magic. So I love writers who, like you all, who write with this diversity and these tough topics for real kids and real life. I mean, Cody's book might be a fantasy book, but it hits on real topics and real life, so that's very important. So, okay, Cody?
First, Margie, I want to say, like, the fact that these kids feel that they can approach you says a lot about you. And I really appreciate that you can be that person that these kids feel that they can approach and talk to about these issues that are really important. Like, being an ally, you don't understand how important it is, like, to people of all ages who are struggling with any type of identity crisis or anything. Katelynn, when you said it was always present, reading was for you, I thought you said it was in prison that you realized you loved it. And I was like, okay, hold on. We got to talk about this.
No.
Okay. But it was not in prison. Okay. So actually, my love of reading began in elementary school. I went to a little bitty Catholic school. It was a little private school, and the library was so tiny, and it was just like rows and rows of Bibles. But along with that, there was also a row of Nancy Drew books. And I was a little kid, and I was like, well, what kind of Bibles are these? Like, I want to read this Bible. And so I checked it out, and I became so obsessed with Nancy Drew that I read everything I could of Nancy Drew. And then it was in middle school when I found an author named Madeleine L'Engle, and that was where I found my first fantasy book that I'd ever read. And that was where I was like, oh, other worlds are amazing and other like magic. And I became so obsessed with fantasy at that point. So that was kind of my beginning. But authors I love, as far as realistic authors go, John Irving is one who has a lot of meaning for me. He's actually the reason I became a writer, I think, because I became obsessed with his style and everything. So yeah, so that is me.
Okay, we have a couple of comments I'm going to show from Rosario. She says, you all are awesome, loving this so much. And KJ Smith, Nancy Drew is iconic. She
Yay.
is. I remember reading Nancy Drew in elementary. I used to have this elementary school librarian. Her name was Mrs. Boyd. I'll never forget. She was not the nicest librarian, but she was, to me, I remember at that time I thought librarians were supposed to be that way. She was very serious and very like, you know, I wanted a book, and she was really good about having all of our books. She just wasn't very friendly, you know, but I still loved her. Like, I loved her. And she had all the Nancy Drew books. And I remember just like every time she would give me a new one and a new one. So I always felt she loved us in her own little way. But, you know, and then I remember always wanted to be a librarian, even because of her. But I always told myself I was going to be a nice librarian. Somebody who was just like, not so like I wanted everybody in the library, not just the little book nerds. You know, I wanted everyone, even though you're not a book nerd. I still want you in the library because I feel even being around books, you can get influenced by the books. And sometimes whenever we have kids in the library who aren't so much bookworms and they're just sitting there doing nothing, like I'll still go like, hey, you want to read a book? Like I'm like a pusher, like, you really want to read? Like sometimes they'll get it, man, you know, and then they like it. So I believe everybody can be a reader if they just have the right book, like Rosario says. Okay, so we're just about out of time. It's already going to be 11:40. So right now I'm going to ask you guys your favorite ice cream flavor, and that will be our last one. I don't know if Cody wants to answer that because he's probably freezing, never wanted to.
My favorite ice cream flavor is hot soup. Right now, it would be amazing. Now, weird with ice cream where I feel like I thought about this a lot, and I feel like my favorite flavor of ice cream is the one that I'm eating at that moment. Because every time I get an ice cream of any kind, I'm like, oh, this is the best I've ever had. And then the next time I'm like, oh, this is the best ice cream I've ever had. So my favorite flavor is all of the above and also hot soup.
Right now. Jackie?
Chocolate chip cookie dough with some hot fudge or chocolate syrup mixed in.
Miracle?
Butter pecan.
Oh, yeah. My mom loves that one. Katelynn?
Okay. If we're talking in general, right, then across the board, cookies and cream with some sort of like chocolate syrup or hot fudge and the sprinkles and all that stuff. But H-E-B has their brand Creamy Creations, and they have 1905 vanilla. I have no idea how it's as delicious as it is, even though it's just vanilla, but it is. And then they have one called Cookies Over Texas, which is the vanilla ice cream with the Oreo cookies and little bits of cookie dough. And it is the most beautiful thing I've ever had in my entire life. So I have like a whole catalog of like, you want ice cream? Hold on. So I loved this question. But yes, cookies and cream across the board, but you need all the nice little toppings.
You know, Creamy Creations is probably the best ice cream in the world. It's better than Bluebell and whatever other ice cream that people claim is the best ice cream. No. The best ice cream is the ice cream from H-E-B called Creamy Creations.
100%.
Every flavor is amazing. Like, I like to buy little pints of everything. I'll just like, I want to try this. I want to try this. Everything. They have one called Mexican hot chocolate, I think.
It's so
Oh
good.
my god.
It's so good.
Okay,
There's
next
Cody's ice cream.
time in y'all's neck of the woods, I need to try this because we do not have HEB in Dallas.
How do you not have HEB in Dallas? It's
I don't know,
expensive.
but the first time I ever went to one was a band trip in San Antonio when I was in high school. I was like, where are we? What is this place? It was HEB.
HEB is the best store in the world. Like,
Your
the
next
best.
beach day, we are going to take you to the big, gigantic aisle and just be like, take your pick of
Take
all the
everything, Jackie.
Yes.
Okay. DC?
I feel like Jackie, I'm missing out. I don't have one here. I'm like, what is going on? I know. I was like, oh my God. So I recently got introduced to salted caramel gelato, and we actually have a store here in Texarkana that is homemade. So I spend way too much time there. Let's be honest about this. So that has become my new guilty pleasure.
I love gelato too. Okay. So does anybody have anything else they want to tell anyone to say to everybody? Let me ask for the last question. So I don't want to take up any more. Hold on. I can't even type anymore.
Margie, I have something I want to share.
Yes, please.
Just real quick. I just finished this fantasy book recently, and it's amazing. I definitely recommend it if you have not read it. I'm looking forward to the second release. Hopefully, I think it comes out in the spring. But lots of magic, lots of secrets, twists and turns. And it's called Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. And it's amazing. So I definitely recommend it.
That looks amazing.
It really is.
I think I have that. Who's the publisher?
Published. Oh, hold on. Let me look here. Is it Balzer and plus Bray?
Okay, yeah, I think I have that one.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that cover. That's a beautiful, beautiful cover.
It is. That's what caught me. I was in Barnes & Noble, and I was just walking in the YA section, and the cover just totally just grabbed me. And I was like, I'm going to take a chance, and I'm glad I did.
That looks
beautiful. It is. It's a very good book.
I'm going to share this one comment from Jason that he had earlier. Where is my comment? How do I share? Show. There we go. Do you guys think it's a good thing for students to try their hands at fan fiction?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Jason.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
I want to say Jackie's book. Is your book fan fiction?
I say all of my books are fan fiction. I say that Boy Band is like One Direction fan fiction, although now you can say it's BTS fan fiction. Just imagine Sam is J-Hope. I'm just throwing that out there right now.
Yeah, she's throwing them out.
Cemetery Tours is like Ghost Adventures fan fiction. I mean, I started out writing Harry Potter fan fiction in high school. That's what got me through high school. So no, 100%. And the Christmas book, that's definitely Hallmark Christmas movie fan fiction.
Fan fiction is beautiful. I remember I'm a Twilight girl, I'll never ever be ashamed to be Team Edward forever. And I used to love to read Twilight fan fiction. Like I loved it. Like I still love Twilight. But fan fiction to me is a lot of fun, and it's a really great way, I think. And then a lot of like really amazing stories and authors and stuff have evolved from Twilight fan fiction and Harry Potter fan fiction, and so yeah, fan fiction is amazing.
Yeah, that's one of my soapboxes. Like I would I have students who are hesitant that because a lot of times I'll recognize like a hoodie that they're wearing, or like they'll see my Hero Academia UA backpack and they're like, oh my gosh, you like that? And then we boom. And they're hesitant to be like, oh, do you read fan fiction? And the look on their faces when I tell them yes, and the look on their faces when I say like, do you write it? That's amazing. Because for them, sometimes it's hard to come up with the ideas or to make it flow, but if they can take something that they love so much and put their own spin on it and put their own original characters, which is amazing, and write the story in a way that they like and they contribute, that's honestly a really, really great way to get students engaged in writing, because they're writing about something that they already love and something that they already like and feel a connection to. And so I saw in his comment that he put, fascinated that there are 1,000-page fanfics. It's insane how extensive they get and how well written they are. I think some of my favorite pieces of literature are fan fictions that they make you cry and But that is definitely one of the soapboxes that's like fan fiction is great. And if students want to get into writing by connecting in that way, 100% encourage it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Pride and Prejudice fan fiction. I mean, and that I can live on that stuff alone. Like anything Mr. Darcy all day long. I mean, there's Dracula Mr. Darcy, there's Werewolf Mr. Darcy, there's Rockstar Mr. Darcy,
Really?
every Mr. Darcy. And I could read that for the rest of my life and not even care about what's going on in the world. Because and you're right. Some of it's written so. I think Jane Austen would be proud. Like it's written so well. So I love fan fiction. That was a good question. Thank you, Jason. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything else to say?
Margie, thank you so much for putting this together. We love you, and you worked so hard. And you, how has your first year as an author been? And what's your favorite ice cream?
Yes.
My first year as an author has been wonderful, and it's been great, guys. Like I can't even. I'm so blessed, and I'm so every day I pinch myself thinking like, wow, I can't believe we did this, and it's still going on, and people are actually still loving this book and buying this book, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you. And my favorite ice cream, oh my god, is the one from Creamy Creations. This is one of my favorites. I can't even say it's my only favorite, but it's the strawberry poteet Christmas. Hello, strawberry poteet ice cream. I think that's what it's called, or poteet strawberry or something. But it's a Creamy Creations, and it's the best ice cream. Like I buy it just to keep it stashed all year. And sometimes it doesn't taste as good like in January as it does in July, but I still have it. It's so great.
DC, clearly we are missing out.
Yo, you are. Like, you are totally missing out.
An HEB field trip. Just everyone come down and all get some ice cream.
I'm like devastated that y'all don't have an HEB in your entire
We do.
Wow.
We need to.
We're still missing
somewhere.
out.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much. It was so good to see y'all, and I miss you all. So
we miss
you
too.
Thank you.
Hopefully next year we get to do this in person at the beach.
Please.
Thank you.
Great, especially for Cody.
Yeah.
I'll still wear all this.
But thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
Bye.
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 Thank everyone for attending.